Hello and welcome to another episode of the Trash Talk Podcast. Yes, very funny, Sergej. I am your host, JJ, and as I've just mentioned, this is Sergej. You know him, you love him. For some reason, I don't know.
Hello.
What are we talking about today, Sergej?
I think something with movies or TV shows or something like that.
Okay.
I forgot which topic we do first.
Our first topic is adaptations, where we talk about why books are always better than their movie adaptations. No exceptions. That's probably not the case, but, just generally...
I don't know, man. That sounds really pretentious.
I mean, the general principle is that we're talking about things getting adapted into, generally speaking, other mediums. Now, of course, because of...
Yeah.
of the common industry practices as well as our personal experiences, it's probably going to mostly be books adapted into movies and TV shows. Books / comic books / manga, but you get the gist.
Yeah. Written media.
Exactly. From
basically.
From written to, moving pictures with sounds.
Something like that.
Mostly. Anyways, so what are your thoughts on adaptations? I guess let's start this very broadly. What are your thoughts on adaptations?
Oh, that stuff is great, man. Lets you enjoy something without investing a lot of time into reading. Because reading can be boring, especially if you don't know if you like that series or not.
Huh. That's an interesting angle that I haven't thought about, because generally speaking, if I read the book and watch the adaptation, I'm probably going to read the book first, more often than not. Especially because I find it that, first of all, reading I generally don't find categorically boring, but I do oftentimes find it boring when I know what's going to happen.
Never really had that problem. Because for me, I usually watch something first and then read the source material for it. And because I already know how the general story is playing out and how the characters look and talk to, it's way easier for me to picture that in my head. Plus, I get a lot more background details.
Okay,
just side storylines and everything.
Yeah, the visualization of the characters as they are portrayed in the adaptation is definitely something I can relate to. I definitely have had the experience with certain things. I mean, sometimes even if you're just aware of the adaptation, you don't even have to have seen the adaptation. Oftentimes, at least for the main characters, you know what they look like in the adaptation. Even if you haven't watched the actual thing, you've seen posters or trailers or screenshots. I mean, the internet is a wonderful place.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting because my experience is usually the opposite, right? For example, I want to say I've read all of the Harry Potter books before I ever saw any of the movies. I don't know if that is true, but I just want to say that's the case. I definitely read the Hunger Games books around the time when the movie... I think around the time the movie was hitting TV. After the movie came to theaters, I started reading the books. And then I think I watched the movie the first time it played in German free TV. So, back in the day when I was still watching TV. And so, my experience with adaptations generally is that I've read the books first. I think Lord of the Rings was one of the few cases where I might have seen the movies before I started reading the books, and I've mentioned this before, of course, I never finished those because I thought they were a bit too dense. I didn't enjoy the writing style. I thought I was actually bored by it. Now, I'm not going to say that is definitively how those books are, because you have to take into account that was years ago when I read those. I was a literal child back then, so that is something to consider. I don't know if 22-year-old me would still say that those are... Jesus, I'm 22. That those would still be boring to read. But for, 12-year-old me or whatever, yeah. I don't know, was that...
That's a long time ago.
Honestly, I don't know. Okay. I know that I used to read a lot as a child. I don't know how old I was, but I do realize that there's one thing I can look at. As I said, I know pretty much accurately when I read the Hunger Games books, and I know that I've read most everything else before that. I think it's one of the last times that I was really reading, especially like a series of books, like very actively. Meaning, it should be possible. Okay, that is the book. The first one came out in 2008. That's the books though. All right, I also The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I literally have it in my room right now. 2020 just came out. Haven't read it yet. Where is a link to the adaptation? Oh yeah, film. That works. 2012. So yeah, that would have been about 8 years ago. I guess it would have been around 14 when I read the 14, 15 when I read the Hunger Games books. And I can't say much more about the other series, but I can say that I was probably younger when I read Lord of the Rings, for example. So I would have been at most 14. You gotta kind of take that into consideration when I talk about, like how it was too boring and drawn out for me, the writing style. For a 14-year-old.
Yeah, that...
8+ years later, I don't know.
I haven't realized that was that long ago. Thought you meant like 16, maybe 17-year-old you.
That's around the time when I stopped reading. And I have started reading again after that, and it's not. I might have read like a little bit here or there, but like when I was like a big time reader, that was when I was younger. I think I started reading in elementary school, and I must have stopped around the time when I was 15. Yeah, 14, 15-ish.
Dang.
Maybe 16, but that's something you have to take into account there. I think I should have probably figured that the numbers for that out whenever we talked about reading in another topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is
quite impressive.
Honestly, it's crazy to think how long ago that was.
I mean, it's like basically half of your lifespan ago.
I mean, yeah, if I'm saying like anything of that is like 8+ years ago and I'm 22 now, like that is about a third of my life that I haven't read afterwards. And I would have been, start of elementary school, I would have been about 6, so it's like about a third of my about the first third of my life I couldn't read. Well, not quite the first third, it's a bit less, but just under a third, then a bit over a third I was reading somewhat heavily, and then about another third I didn't read much. It's kind of fascinating to think about. And
crazy.
I'm getting back into it. I've in a thought for a couple of years now that I should be reading more, but now I've went from saying I should be reading more to actually reading more, because that's kind of an important part of that whole thing. I honestly hate that mindset, right? I know we're completely off topic, but I feel like I can indulge this for a moment. Of like, you want to do something, and then you always talk about wanting to do it, and then you just don't. Like, what the fuck?
Yep. Can relate.
I hate that, and I'm not even criticizing people who do that, because clearly I myself do that. I literally hate that I do that. So yeah, gotta just sometimes. Maybe after we're done with this, I'm gonna actually finish that book. I'm close. I'm close. And I guess after that, I will read the aforementioned 4th Hunger Games book that came out recently. Because while I say I have it lying around, it's not actually mine. And I think Joe will want it back at some point, so...
Oh yeah, I already thought that it's Joe's.
Yeah. So, that's...
Okay.
So, Adaptations.
Where did we left?
The Hunger Games movies were very disappointing when I watched them, because I felt like they were leaving out a lot of details that were important to the story. I'm not even sure if I watched all of them, but I watched definitely the first 2 movies.
But isn't that like the case in a lot of adaptations.
Yes. And I think that is why I generally tend to think that the books are better than the movies. Now, some books are written in a way where there's a lot of details that maybe aren't necessary, and it actually helps trim down the fat a little bit for the adaptations. But I feel like overall, a lot of books, especially well-written ones, which are the ones that tend to get adapted more, just by their nature, it does them a disservice to cut a lot of the details that, at the very least, enhance the plot, and sometimes are even necessary for the plot to make sense, right? So sometimes you have it that an adaptation will, like, leave out a certain side plot, which means that, like, now some sort of thing happens that looks like a Deus Ex Machina, but in the book it was actually very well explained and the lead up made sense, but in the movie it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. I guess that I'm actually not too well versed when it comes to like popular media adaptations and the source material, so I don't know how often that happens, but I'm gonna guess it's not that often, is it?
What happens not very often?
Like the thing you described right now, like leaving out a side plot and then Deus Ex Machina thing.
I don't know if that specific
to resolve that.
I don't know if that specific thing happens a lot, but I feel like certain things happen oftentimes where character motivations are not as easy to understand because some of that character's backstory has not been explained as thoroughly as it would have been in the books, and where a lot of characters seem flatter because of that, or sometimes even perform actions that might seem to go against the character despite making sense in the books but not making sense in the movie, for example.
Okay.
I mean, of course, what I said is...
I can't actually comment on that. I just have not really seen that many examples of that.
So...
Just purely because I haven't read that much.
So I guess the question is, what is your general experience with adaptations? Let's, I guess, start with that. Like, do you think that generally stuff is adapted well or not well in your personal experience? I know we're both drawing from a very limited pool because there's so much media out there, and
oh yeah, and my pool of media that I consume is quite different from what you consume,
which
I think
is good because in that way we have a broader thing to talk about. While it is harder for us to point out specific examples that the other one can understand, we do collectively have a bigger breadth of knowledge on this topic than we would if we both had the exact same experiences. Though then we could get at the same points from different... I guess there's advantages to both.
True. Okay, so from my experience, it's like... I don't know, it's not perfect, because that is really, really hard to achieve. And with perfect, I mean like the adaptation being better than the source material.
Yes.
I've seen, I think, 2 examples of that. I think it was 2. One I can remember, the other one I can't. But I'm pretty sure I'm just gonna remember right after the episode.
Yeah, as it always goes.
But yeah, but like most of the time it's worse, but not really that much considerably. Like maybe like 2 points down from the rating I would give to the source material.
Okay, now I have to, of course, ask you,
which is not a lot.
On what scale?
Like, it's okay. That is actually very important. Yes,
100-point scale is very different than on the 5-point scale.
I'm talking about a 10-point scale.
I assumed that, but I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page here. I mean, 2 points on a 10-point scale almost seems somewhat dramatic, especially since, to be honest, most people end up using the top half of the scale more so. It's like everything is rated like 5 through 9 somewhere. But that's an entirely unrelated bias, but yeah.
But I have also kind of the habit of mentally giving some shows more than 10 points. I don't know if you have that too.
No, not really, but that does... I definitely know that phenomenon, and sometimes you have something, you rate something 10 out of 10, and then you have something that's better, and you're like, and you kind of want to give it 11 out of 10, but also that escalates, right? And then you've got Dave Meltzer giving matches like 6 3/4 stars, which is out of 5, which is just bizarre. But I know, very, very specific reference, barely anyone got that, it doesn't matter. It's a wrestling thing.
Okay.
The point being, I generally tend to, over time, adjust my ratings so that the scale from 1 to 10 can stay more accurate. But also, I generally often stay away from these sort of ratings into a more abstract rating system where it's just like, we can describe it with words, right? Like, this was very good. This was decent. This was okay.
Oh, yeah.
And then also just direct comparison, right? Like, oh, this was better than this. This was worse than that. And so, I mean, of course, rating something by comparison gives you the problem that if the other person perceived the thing you're comparing it to very differently, then their perception of the thing you're actually talking about is also going to be different. But with those sort of rating systems in place, you don't have as much of the problem of like, oh, this is just better than 10 out of 10, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
I would say on the actual adaptation topic, I can't think of something where I've personally thought that the adaptation was better. Maybe Lord of the Rings, but again, I haven't fully read the books, and it's been quite a while for both having seen the films and read the books, which makes it harder to judge. I do think that there's been some adaptations that were definitely about as good as the source material, but I generally tend to prefer the source material by a bit as well, so I guess similar to what you said. I don't remember having any problems with the Harry Potter movies. I don't know if that was...
Calmly?
What? Oh, yeah, right, yeah, right.
Dumbledore?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you put your name in the goblet? Dumbledore said calmly. Okay, I mean, that is a nitpick, of course, right?
Yes.
I don't
That's
remember,
just a meme.
I don't remember personally having had any problems with the Harry Potter movies as I saw them, and as I said, at the very least for later movies, but I think for almost, if not all of them, I had read the source material first, right? So I had the comparison. And I didn't notice anything.
Yeah.
That being said, again, like, a lot of that is from back in the day, which is hard for me to now say if my recall of that is that accurate. I do remember, for example, The Host, I was somewhat disappointed by the movie because I felt like they left out some stuff that I felt should have been in there. Same thing for The Hunger Games. But that is still something where I think at the very least, the first Hunger Games movie, and as well as the movie The Host, were both fine movies. Like, and I don't think I would have missed something necessarily if I hadn't read the books. It's just that since I had read the books, I knew what I was missing. So I think they're fine. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that brings us into the next aspect. Like, what do you think makes an adaptation good or bad?
Probably the way how it leaves out side stories if it has to.
Okay,
because there are cases where the people that make the adaptation just cut out a piece of story from every storyline. That's just a bad thing overall. But if you just cut out a side story completely, it's a much, much neater package, I think.
Yeah, so I think what makes a good adaptation is...
Like...
Did you want to say something, or...?
No, continue.
What makes a good adaptation, I think, is being truthful to the source material to some degree, if you want to actually be good as an adaptation. That does not necessarily mean panel for panel recreating the source material. I say panel for panel because comics, but like scene for scene, like punch for punch, like story point for story point, recreating it. But I think it's more important, and that's of course something that I, as many people, have learned over the years, is to actually get the spirit of the story and to get like the core aspects of the story. Oftentimes, it is more important to retain the subtext than to retain like word for word dialogue, for example. And in that, it is important that if you have to, for example, cut something, if you're adapting it to a movie, to figure out what is important to the story and what is important to the story you're trying to tell, and then keep those elements rather than just trying to keep in as many plot points as possible at the expense of the story you're trying to tell. And I think also, it's not always that stuff gets cut, right? If you're adapting, for example, a book into a TV show, or a series of books, oftentimes into a TV show, you can then get the exact opposite problem, where too much filler is also
you kind of have to, yeah.
And I think the other aspect that is also relevant is, while we can talk about how well adapted something is, a good adaptation should still be a good work of art in its own right? So if I make a movie based on a book, and you have never read the book, you should be able to enjoy the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a separate issue from adapting well, but optimally you should do both, right? You should still, the fans of the source material should still be able to enjoy the adaptation, while people that don't know the source material should also be able to do so the same.
Yep. I completely agree with you on that.
I'm just looking at some of the notes that we made, and I think we hit on a lot of this already. I guess one thing to bring up is the idea of the kind of the looser adaptations to more closely adapting something. Where, and I don't know how your experience with this has been, because I think your experience is mostly manga being adapted into anime, right? That's what you are mostly
yes,
knowledgeable on.
Mostly
manga and light novels, I suppose, being adapted into anime, both. But do you have any experience, or I guess, do you have any experience with the more looser adaptations, where maybe you're taking characters and concepts from one universe and then you're making an adaptation, like the example that I always bring up where that happens the most is superheroes, right? Like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the Arrowverse, like those are not based on comic storylines for the most part, but they're based on comic characters interacting with other comic characters, and oftentimes one movie will take inspiration from a comic, but they generally won't straight up adapt the story.
I personally haven't seen anything like that, but I'm pretty sure that there's stuff like that, and relatively popular stuff like that too,
yes,
in anime too. But personally, I haven't seen that.
Okay, because of course not knowing examples makes it hard to talk about that, but I think it's an interesting topic because, like, a close adaptation, right? Like saying the Harry Potter stuff, right? Like the Harry Potter movies tell the same story as the Harry Potter books, right? Voldemort is the bad guy. Horcruxes are involved, more so later on in the story. Like Harry goes to Hogwarts, his school life is relevant, and that's of course always stuff that you can cut down on very easily. Like the school stuff, right? Like it doesn't need to like show every class he's going to in the movies, whereas in the books you can use that to kind of pad the story while still having character moments in there. And then you have, again, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think, is like the biggest, most prominent example where I don't think the movie Iron Man, which was the very first one, is like based on any particular Iron Man story. It's just like loosely retelling.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's retelling the origins, which have been told multiple times in the comics, but I don't think it's based on like one specific storyline in the comics as much. And then once again to Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, and the Avengers. Jesus Christ, like that's not based on any comic, right? Like, sure, the Avengers are a team in the comics, and all the characters are existing characters in the comics. And actually, the Chitauri as the enemies, I don't think exist in the comics. I think they're based on the Skrulls in some degree, but because of legal shenanigans with the movie rights to the Skrulls lying with Fox. They didn't use the Skrulls. They now have those movie rights, so that's why they showed up in Captain Marvel. But I digress. And so... But I think the exact storyline didn't happen, and you were like the Chitauri attack, and like they have like battles with aliens in New York. Like, sure, aliens with battles in New York happen like every other day in the comics. Don't get me wrong. But like the exact storyline is invented for the movie, and then you've got other things like Civil War was a storyline in the comics, but the Sokovia Accords, which were the kind of the driving force in the movie, did not exist in the comics. The version in the comics was similar. It was the Superhuman Registration Act, where all superhumans had to register, like, I am this person, I have those powers, and then they are only allowed to use their powers, basically, if the government authorizes it, for more or less. So, that is not quite the same thing as the Sokovia Accords in the movies, but it's similar. But the driving force behind the Sokovia Accords is the events of Age of Ultron, the movie. Not to be confused with Age of Ultron, the comic, which also has nothing to do with with the movie.
Oh, God.
But so, they're taking a lot of the rough story beats. Like, there is this law that forces superhumans to be known to the government and to work with the government if they want to use their powers and be superheroes. But a lot of the details are very different of how that comes to be. And of course, both the Superhuman Registration Act in the comics ties back to previous events, specifically a lot of the anti-mutant stuff, which of course mutants aren't even in the MCU, where the Sokovia Accords tie back to a previous movie. So they both have a firm place in their own universe, but the storylines are also simultaneously somewhat different.
Okay, yeah. Information overflow, man.
I mean, let's not even get into Infinity War, right? Like, like this is that. I mean, Infinity War is probably based on like 5 different Thanos stories, all of which he tried to. I think it's mostly based on the original Infinity Gauntlet storyline, but like, again, very different from the comic versions.
Yeah.
Let's not even get started on the fact that the Infinity Stones in, like, the Tesseract, or the Cosmic Cube as it is known in the comics, has nothing to do with the Infinity Stones. Right? The Aether that was in the Thor movies, I don't know if that is a thing in the comics, but it definitely isn't an Infinity Stone. Right? And so, like, the Vision doesn't have anything to do with the Infinity Stones. Like, he does have a gem in his forehead, but it's unrelated, right? And so...
Okay, man.
And so the MCU has very little to do with Marvel Comics, in the terms of the actual individual events that happen. But the characters are still somewhat accurately adapted. But also, it's oftentimes taking influences from multiple eras and multiple alternate universes, and just kind of clumps it all together. And so, in terms of being an accurate adaptation, it is far from that. But I still like it very much. And so, that's on a very different... And unlike the example of, again, Hunger Games, for example, I can't be like, oh yeah, they left out this storyline. Like, right, like this, that I felt was important to the story, because the story is so different from the comics that you can't point at, like, this one thing that is missing. It's just... You kind of have to accept them as different stories in their own right that just use the same characters.
Yeah, I actually don't know if that's really a thing in... Well, I guess from what I've heard, One Piece would be like an example of something similar.
I don't...
Like, that's the... I don't know how many episodes that thing has. It's probably around about 1,000 right now.
I was about to say, I think it's over 1,000, yeah.
And generally, the quickest way to catch up to the current state of the story is to read the manga, because that doesn't really have a lot of filler. Because basically, from what I've heard, I haven't read or seen it. In the manga, they mention like some adventures, but only like by name or by small references to them.
Yes.
And in the anime, just to create filler, basically, they animate that entire thing instead of it just being like one or two sentence mention on the side.
It still sounds closer.
Is that kind of
it still sounds closer to
sort of?
So you were asking
Yes.
if that's the same thing, and I think it
Yeah.
still sounds like One Piece is closer in the anime to the source material than the comic movies, because
Well, yes.
the comic movies stray very far. But it's also, by the way, I just looked it up. It has 962 episodes according to Wikipedia, and I don't know how up to date it is because I think it's this is 900. Okay, there's 963 episodes according to Wikipedia. But one of the tables,
Okay.
the series overview lists a total of 962 episodes, but then the sidebar lists 963, and I think that's just because it's ongoing and some elements of the page have been updated more recently than others. It's just a difference of one.
Yeah.
It also lists 14 movies, and 13 television specials. I don't know if they're part of the... I don't think they are. And 7 OVAs, and 4 shorts.
I don't fucking know, man.
And the point is, it's around 1,000 episodes.
I know it's just... Yes. Only thing I know is that it's too long, and I'm not gonna watch it or read it because it is too long.
Honestly, I'm also probably never gonna watch or read it, but more so because it's not my thing. I don't think the length inherently is a problem, though 1,000 episodes is a lot. But then again, I mean, it's an anime, so they're probably like 22-minute episodes, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit deceptive for me as someone who's more used to the 45-minute episodes or 44-minute episodes. Doesn't matter. Like sort of runtime, because effectively it's like 500 episodes, or I guess closer to like 480. And I don't know, have I? I mean, okay, I've watched virtually every single Arrowverse episode besides some of the web specials, but like the main series, I've watched all of them. Which brings up the point. I'm going to look this up right now because I want to see how many episodes it is, because it's probably more. There is an Arrowverse
Oh boy.
viewing order that lists every episode. That is exactly the one I was looking for. Which lists, let's go and list first. Does it still number them? 607 episodes. Some of these are the web specials, which are only like 5 minutes long per episode, but like most of this is 45-minute episodes. There's over 600 of them. Well, I mean, some of these are upcoming.
That is a lot.
I think
that is a lot of time.
I think only the first 601 are ones that have already aired, but still. So you know.
Yeah.
I think the takeaway is that there is a lot.
Too much, I'd say.
It's probably very hard if you want to get into it now and watch everything, but considering that I think I started watching this from around when the first episodes of Arrow aired, like I've seen most of this in real time. So
yeah,
it wasn't a big barrier back then when I was maybe like one season of Arrow behind or something. Like, oh yeah, great, there's already like 20 episodes that you have to watch. Like, yeah, no, not a big deal.
Kind of the same with Doctor Who for me.
Right, Doctor Who. How many episodes is that?
I don't know. It's probably like around about 120 or so from New Who, but I don't know.
Doctor Who. I don't think I can get a total episode count as easily. I would honestly not know where to look. Oh no, okay, it says. So IMDb says 198 episodes, so close to 200.
Dang, that is a lot of episodes.
I mean, to be fair, 12 seasons, right? With the most recent season having 11 episodes.
Oh boy, I completely forgot the current season counter. I thought we were still at season 10 for some reason.
And I think some of the seasons were a bit longer as well, but
yeah, because when I started watching it, I think it just finished airing the 6th season of New Who.
I don't even remember where. I think I might have started watching during the Tennant era. I was relatively early into New Who, so I think that's a huge thing. I think also for a lot of the current One Piece fans, like a lot of them are early adopters, right? Like I don't think there's a lot of people who went into One Piece having multiple hundred episodes and were like, I'm going to start watching this.
Yeah.
But I think that honestly,
that is true.
The barrier of entry to long TV shows is, I think, something we're going to talk about in the second topic, which brings up the question: is there anything you want to say about adaptations before we hit the halftime show, or the facts of the week before that?
Facts of the week first.
I mean, I did say that.
Yes. No, not really.
Okay, Sergej, what is your fact of the week?
My fact of the week is, I think, a very funny one. But first, do you know a man by the name of Thomas Fitzpatrick or something like that?
I don't think so.
Okay. So, basically, he is a guy that in 1956 stole an airplane and landed it in New York, like right in front of his favorite bar or something.
Okay.
Just to prove that he could do it.
I mean, yeah, fair enough.
Like that is an impressive hold my beer right there.
I mean, you probably had some beers that right after.
I think right before that too. So yeah, basically, and then 4 years later, when he told that story to someone again at a bar, and they didn't believe them, he did it again.
Okay. The fact that he was a free man 4 years after he done it is, in and of itself, kind of impressive.
Yep.
Because it seems like he would be breaking quite a few laws doing that.
Oh shit! It wasn't 4 years. It was only 2 years. Sorry.
I mean, even
2 years after that.
Like, did he ever get arrested for that? Like,
after he's done it the second time, he was in prison for 6 months.
Okay. Yeah. So... the judge is like, okay, okay, you did something criminal. I guess we have to punish you. I mean, this was pretty rad, but I guess we're gonna send you to jail for like, I don't know, half a year. Okay.
Like, imagine doing that.
I mean, I wouldn't, but I suppose, you know, if you're thus inclined. Boy.
Or rather, imagine being that guy that didn't believe him on the second one.
Oh god, yeah, like, yeah, sure you did that. Oh, you want me to do it again? Yes. Oh my god. Okay. That is quite the story.
And also remember, he was intoxicated both times he did that.
I mean, maybe that's what it takes to be brave enough to do that.
I guess.
Yeah, bravery or stupidity, that's your call to make. But what is also very interesting is the fact that apparently there is something that distinguishes religions and cults. And I might have said something different in the past, so I want to quickly make that clear that... Oh, by the way, I'm going to my fact of the week, which is why I'm saying all these things. So I used to sometimes say that like the only thing that distinguishes a cult from a religion is just the popularity. That is in fact not the case. There is other differences. Also, cults don't have to be religious in nature. So a cult is usually identified more by the fact that it tries to control its members, where religions are oftentimes a bit more freeform, not as controlling, and oftentimes cults shape the personalities of their members and try to control their actions. And one way to identify a cult or to kind of see how culty an organization is that I've heard as being very popular is the bite model. Now, it's not called that because you bite people who are in a cult and see if they taste culty, though that would be hilarious, also kind of worrying. But if you could... Listen, I'm not saying you should bite people, but if their taste would tell you if they're in a cult, that would be fascinating. No. It is called that. It is called that because it identifies 4 factors of cult behavior, and that is the 4 things that they try to control, which are behavior, information, thought, and emotion. And then BITE, it spells out bite, because humans love acronyms, especially if they're already existing words. So yeah, the bite model was developed by Stephen Hassan, an American mental health counselor who has written on the subject of mind-control, blah, 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 Wikipedia stuff. He used to be in a cult, and then he designed this model to kind of identify cultish behavior. So yeah, if you ever wanted to know if something is a cult...
Props to him.
Are they controlling behavior, emotion, information, and thought? That was out of order. But you get the point. I figured this was like...
That is...
interesting to know stuff. And now that we've talked about...
Not only interesting, it might actually come in handy.
Yes. There's various other things you can look at for cults, but that is what I decided to mention today. And let me now set up the halftime show. But first, we have to generate a random number. And we're using these things. Those are dice. And...
That's a lot of dice.
I know. Which I guess means that we should probably transition to a place where we can actually see the result of a dice if I roll it.
Dang, that was smooth.
I know. You might think this is a special effect, but I literally just pushed the thing out of place. Like, this is old school filmmaking, people. We're making a transition by physically moving things. Okay. So, what does the roll of this die mean? Do you want to say it, or should I?
Should probably... we randomly determine the halftime show.
Yeah, I mean more what do the numbers...
Should I read it out, or should
go
you
ahead.
read it out?
If you already have it open, go ahead.
Okay, so the first one is Would You Rather?
Yes.
Second is GeoGuessr. Third is Higher or Lower. And fourth and final is Google Feud.
I can't help but notice that so far we've only done Would You Rather and Google Feud. Sorry, Higher or Lower, not Google Feud, the other one. We have never done Google Feud or GeoGuessr. Well, by never, I mean we've played both before on the channel, but not you and I, and also not in the podcast.
Yeah.
We did GeoGuessr on a podcast before, but so this is me rolling a die, and the number is... Can you read it, Sergej? Or should I just say it?
It looks like a 3.
Okay, because honestly, from here, I cannot tell if you can tell on the camera. That's the thing, right? I can clearly see that this is a 3,
Yep.
but that means it's higher or lower once again. It's kind of funny how we just do the same 2 things every time. You know, despite...
It's rigged.
You would think so.
Just have the first topic like 30 times in a row.
I think at some point we should just pick something else. But hey, for now, higher or lower, we're going classic because we don't need to beat the clock because Sergej will fail on the first try anyways. So, Sergej, what is higher?
Oh yeah.
Penn and Teller or WikiLeaks? I think
Oh
we've
god,
had
that.
Penn and Teller only
I'm
had.
surprised Penn and Teller hasn't more searches.
I know, right? It's 18K is not a lot.
But if Penn and Teller have that few, I can't even imagine how few WikiLeaks would have. So I'm going lower. I don't believe that the general populace searches for WikiLeaks more often than Penn and Teller.
I think I want to say it was higher because we had the number before as well. Yeah, like it's way higher.
Like what? I mean, yes, I'm happy about that, but what?
Also, I said this last time I think, but like, who the fuck uses Google to find their way to WikiLeaks? Right?
Oh.
Like that doesn't seem right. So I guess it's my turn. David Fincher or
Also
or Baha'i Gardens. I have not heard of the Baha'i Gardens. I'm gonna go lower. Street Fighter 5, more than 5K? I would say so. Twin Peaks. Ooh, I mean, this used to be more popular than Street Fighter, I would say, but is it still? Well, it's Street Fighter 5 specifically. I'm gonna say higher, but that's risky. It's not as risky as I thought.
never heard of that.
Paris Saint-Germain. I don't know who that is. It's on a flag. It might even be... I don't know. Doesn't matter. Lower. Never mind. Who or what is that? And why is it so popular?
I don't know.
Well, I am average, but I'm better than Sergej because he fails on the first try every time. So, Sergej. Miley Cyrus or Bryan Adams? This one is not even that fair. Like, they're both musicians, in case you were wondering.
What the heck is that?
They're both musicians.
I've heard of Miley Cyrus, but I don't know who Bryan Adams is.
Okay, have you heard the song Summer of '69?
I believe so, but I don't remember which one it was. I'm just... You know what? Let me just use random number generators. I don't know.
do you also have a dice cam set up?
No.
By the way, this is not how the game is supposed to be.
I'm gonna go lower.
I expect it to be lower, but I would also like it to be high. Yeah. Not as popular as this. Chester...
Oh, come on, what is this?
I don't know who that is, actually, but according to the picture, he's probably also a musician. So, you know.
I'm gonna... since that has been a good strategy so far, I'm just gonna do the same thing again.
So Sergej is gonna prove that he's better when he's not guessing, but actually randomly determining it. Which, you know...
I'm gonna go higher. The dice don't lie.
Oh, wait. Is it... Wait.
The dice don't lie!
Actually, now that I think about it, is that the guy from Linkin Park? Because then I do know who that is. But anyways, Sports Direct. Higher or lower? 3.35 million.
That looks like a higher.
I would expect lower. Honestly, I don't know Sports Direct as a... Never mind then!
The dice don't lie!
Sergej, is Sports Direct or the Powerpuff Girls?
That looks like a higher.
I'm gonna guess lower, but they did recently get a reboot, so who knows?
Oof.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you did get just as much as I got when I tried, so, you know, there is that. Charlie Hebdo or Robert De Niro? I assume that, based on this, that it's the guy who made the caricatures in France who was assassinated, or there was an assassination attempt on him. I think that's the guy. I don't know that well. Robert De Niro, Hollywood actor, he's higher. Not actually as Converse, huge brand, more than 1 million, I would say so. French Bulldog, specific dog breed, seems a bit too generic of a search term to be popular. I'm going to say lower. Not as much as I thought, but hey. Stevie Wonder, I'm going to hope higher, but honestly, I don't know. Yeah, celebrities is always rough, right? So I got 3 again. So I'm going to give Sergej another round, and then I guess we're going to move on to the second topic. Sergej, German Shepherd or China Mobile? Definitely.
You know what's happening? I'm going to ask the dice. That looked like a higher. Dice, please don't fail me. Oh no.
But actually, you did 3 now, didn't you?
Yes.
So I guess I gotta go one more time as well, because I let you start. Lamborghini or The West Wing? The West Wing, popular TV show. Is it more popular than 3.35? I don't think so, but it was very enjoyable, like the bit of it that I watched. Tesla, higher. Man, car brands outranking The West Wing. Well, we know that this guy got like, what was it, like 300,000?
300,000.
Yeah. Restaurant, very generic, but probably people use it to find restaurants in the area, so I'm gonna go higher. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Easter Island, well, lower than 45 million. Tourette's. Probably higher, but honestly, that's always the problem with, like, illnesses and stuff. Magic the Gathering is I mean, it was the same, I guess. Either one works, or they round it but don't show the rounding. In which case it would be really unfair. Magic the Gathering, I would expect to be strongly higher. Very interesting picture that shows, but very popular game. It just increasing popularity thanks to Magic Arena as well, so not as popular as I thought, but still enough. Toyota, higher. We've seen car brands ranked really high. IAMS, I don't know what that is. I'm gonna go lower. Yes. Next one is probably gonna be higher, yeah. Obviously, Usher, definitely higher. But, like, I mean, just the fact that the other one was 22k. Nike, probably higher. That is the case. Chanel, oof. I'm gonna go lower. Yeah. That was a bit of a gamble. The Dallas Cowboys. Have they recently won any football games? I don't think so. That was a dig. I think they won, like, I don't even know what their record was, but it's probably about 8-8. Maybe even a bit better. Are they more popular than Chanel? More than 2 million. I'm going to say lower, but that seems very risky. That was way too risky. Okay, I got a score of 12, which is the score in the top 10%. So, Sergej, you got, in the total of 3 attempts, you got a total of 3 points. I got in 3 attempts, 18 points? So
isn't it like the same score I got last time?
What, 3 in 3 rounds?
Yes.
I don't think so. It might have been 2. Because I think you did 0-2-0, didn't you?
I don't know.
Point is, I'm good at this, you're not. And let's move on to the second topic.
Okay, so.
Movies versus TV shows. Now, this does play a little bit into the adaptation aspect of it, because, of course, if you adapt something, do you adapt it into a movie or a TV show? I would say the general rule is, if you have multiple books, you either adapt into multiple movies or into a TV show. Whereas if you have one book, it's oftentimes just a movie. But this is also just generally outside of the context of that. So okay, do you prefer movies or TV shows?
Not really that big of a preference to either.
Okay.
Like, just plainly in itself. It's more important to me that they choose the right medium.
So
to which to adapt to.
So I clearly also watch a lot of both. I think that was somewhat clear from... I mean, I did mostly talk about movies in the previous one, but I think for adaptations it was more prevalent. I mean, I did also mention having watched over 600 episodes of just...
Arrowverse, yes.
Well, I guess I haven't watched over 600 because it was just over 600, and I think I haven't watched Freedom Fighters The Ray yet or Vixen Season 2, so technically, not quite, but close. point being, and also like 200 episodes of Doctor Who, and so
Mhm.
and I probably watched a lot of Doctor Who episodes 2 or 3 times by now, so yeah, I was going somewhere with this. Right, I like both. Like, comment, subscribe. That's it.
Yes.
No, the point is, I think I generally prefer TV shows because there's more of it. So that's also why the barrier of entry, like there's so many episodes, is not as much a factor for me because I generally like those longer stories, like big interconnected universes, that sort of thing. Like when we get to see, like, you know, you grow attached to the characters and stuff, and you just keep getting more stories.
Yeah.
Now, there is also movie universes and series of movies. I mean, the MCU I mentioned earlier, like, there's so many movies and some TV shows that are kind of in there, but there's definitely a lot of movies in there, and at least one TV show right now that is firmly in the MCU. By the way, watch WandaVision, it's great, but I know it's a dumb title, but it's a great show. But yeah, so I think I generally prefer TV shows just because they can give us more. I said it also when I talked about adaptations, right? Like, I don't like it when movies cut out storylines, right? I just want more content.
Yeah. I personally don't really have that problem. I'm completely fine with movies leaving out a few side stories, but having a good overall package. Especially if there's like no more source material to adapt from.
That is, of course, assuming that there is source of material being adapted. And I must say, I have seen shows that were based on books, but then went and did all of the book stories and then just continued and were still good. Now, there's other shows where that's clearly not the case, at least from what I hear. So, by all accounts, Game of Thrones got pretty bad after they ran out of books. I have neither read the books nor seen the show, so I can't speak to that. But I can tell you that other shows were good that went past the books. The Magicians comes to mind as a show that I think went past the books. I didn't read the books, so it's, once again, hard to say how accurately adapted and everything. But also, by the way, according to what people say, a lot of people seem to think that the show is better than the books. Again, I can't speak to that. I haven't read the books. So there's definitely something to be said about just having more story that I feel like I enjoy, but movies can definitely, especially for stories that lend themselves to that, be a good thing, because some shows also just, at some point, they should have stopped earlier, right? Like, they just meander on.
Yeah.
And that's also its own problem. I used to think that movies could not tell good character stories. So I have since learned that it's incorrect, but I used to think that, like, if you wanted to actually tell a good character arc, that is hard to do in a movie because of just how short they are and how much time they have to work with. But that is partially because I used to mostly watch, and I still do mostly watch, I think, action movies, or at least movies that technically fall under the action genre. I mean, I guess fantasy and sci-fi as well, but even then, a lot of more plot-driven stuff where the character arcs are more secondary and thereby harder to actually tell a good character arc, if that is not the main thing that the movie is about in a limited runtime. But I think the first time I really felt that a movie could tell a good character story, especially an emotional one, which is one of the things where I was like, you can't get me emotionally attached to a character in like a 90-minute movie.
Oh,
or a
boy.
Movie. I was like, I'm not going to get attached to a character in a movie. Like, those are way too short. And then I watched Your Name. And boy, that hit hard. Can highly recommend it. Great movie. Dude.
Yep.
That was something. So yeah, movies can tell good emotional character stories in a very short time frame.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, they can. Pretty good, actually.
That
pretty well.
Yeah. That being said, I do still like my big sprawling universes.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Uh, um, yeah. Back to topic for movies versus TV shows.
I feel like I didn't quite go off topic because I did.
Not really,
But
but
yeah,
slightly
go ahead.
only. Yeah. So, um, do you have any movies or TV shows that you think would have been better if they were the other thing?
That's an interesting point.
Like for me personally, I feel like the Lord of the Rings would have been better if it was a TV series instead of
news for you?
3 movies.
Um.
Don't tell me.
Okay, so who was it? I think it's HBO. I want to say, I don't remember. Some online streaming service is working on a Lord of the Rings TV show. And
wait, really?
But it's not. Here's the crazy part, right? It's not based on the books. So they are making a Lord of the Rings show that I believe takes place between the Silmarillion, whatever that one's called, and the actual Lord of the Rings books. So I think the Silmarillion takes place in the First Age, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit takes place in the Third Age, and the TV show takes place in the Second Age, I think. So it takes place before the book story. But yeah, it is set in that universe, and it will, to my understanding, be just called The Lord of the Rings. So yeah, make of that what you will.
Interesting. That sounds pretty cool.
I believe it was supposed to come out last year, but COVID. But I think that is still in the works. The Lord of the Rings TV series. God, I love Wikipedia. And so
it's great.
An upcoming television series is produced based on the novel Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. It was developed by blah blah blah. Oh, Prime Video actually. It's Amazon that's making this. It is set in the Second Age of Middle Earth, before the events of the Lord of the Rings novel and films. Series is produced by Amazon Studios in cooperation with the Tolkien Estate and a bunch of other companies. Amazon bought the rights. The first 8-episode season is expected to premiere on Prime Video in 2021. Second season was formally ordered in November 2019. So they already decided that in the end of 2019 that they were going to make a second season. And yeah, it's set in the Second Age, and I think the original book series is set in the Third Age. So yeah,
I don't know, but
the Lord of the Rings,
that sounds amazing.
Blah blah blah. It's set sort of antagonist. You know what? Let me just search for age. Okay, there's a lot of words that contain the word age. Okay, prior age, great. That doesn't tell me anything. So something about the First Age. I cannot right offhand find any Lord of the Rings lore that very clearly mentions that. But anyways, the point is, right? They're making a Lord of the Rings TV show. There you go. Okay,
great.
I think there's two things to be said. First of all, traditionally, TV shows have a lower budget than movies, which means that a lot of would have been better as one has to take that into account. Now, in the modern day, that is slowly changing with major film studios making television shows, and with Disney Plus in particular, I think being a big driving force. Though again, I think the Amazon Prime Lord of the Rings show is also supposed to have a huge budget, but I think Mandalorian was like the biggest budget for a TV show. I mean, it's not even a TV show technically because it's not on TV, but the point is for a show on a per episode basis, and it was rivaling movie budgets, and it looks movie quality as well. Like Mandalorian, also great show, watch it. I mean, WandaVision has like pretty much looks like it could be an MCU movie, but it's a TV show in the MCU, and goddamn it, if it wasn't a TV show, it wouldn't work. But
Yeah.
Things that would have been better as movies, as TV shows, I think, is mostly, and you kind of hit on that with Lord of the Rings, things that were already series of movies, right? If it was multiple movies, it could probably work just as well, if not better, as a TV show, if it still had a budget where it could look as good as the movies did.
I wouldn't really care that much, I think. Can't say for sure because I haven't experienced that, but...
I mean, I've definitely enjoyed a lot of low-budget things, but saying it would strictly be better as a TV show if the quality is lower is always a bit hard to say. But given that they could look as good as they did, for example, Harry Potter, I think would have been a great TV show, right? You could have done a lot of the classroom stuff that the movies skip over and done a lot more. You could have had a slightly bigger cast. There is some side characters that could have been included in the books, and even original side characters added. They could have gotten more into the school aspect of it and had the big thread being kind of like the overarching thing. At the very least, for the earlier books, that would work.
Like, personally, I probably wouldn't have watched Harry Potter if it was a TV series.
Now, granted, when I think about it,
I feel like...
Sorry, continue.
I feel like it is pretty good that it was actually a series of movies instead of a TV show.
I definitely think we couldn't have done a season per book. Like, some TV shows do that. I don't think that would have worked for Harry Potter, at the very least, if we're talking about traditional, 22-episode seasons. I think this would have been a 2 to 3 season show, probably. Which brings up the question of how do you do that with, the ages of the characters and the actors, right? Because you would have to film it over the same period of time that you filmed the movies, which you just can't do if you're not releasing one season per, filming year or something. So that's... I think logistically it probably wouldn't have worked, but I think from a storytelling standpoint, it could have been done. I don't know if it would have been better as a TV show is the other question. I think it would have worked because you could have done, as I said, more of the classroom stuff and the characters actually learning magic, with a lot of the Voldemort stuff being more of the looming background threat, at least early on. But now that I think about it, that just kind of sounds like The Magicians as well, to some degree, right? The early seasons at the very least, where they are in a school and they're learning their magics while they're being a background threat. Though they don't actually focus that much on... Anyways, I'm getting off topic a bit. I don't know. I feel like maybe some of the MCU stuff would have worked well as a series. Probably not all of it, but I guess you could have made just one or two big series and then just had that be the MCU. Again, the Arrowverse being the closest comparison I can think of a good superhero franchise thing that spans multiple different things. I mean, the Arrowverse having multiple TV shows, the MCU having multiple movies. But Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, especially if you want to just have one MCU movie turned into a TV show, I think Guardians of the Galaxy would lend itself as a TV show since it is more based on the comedy.
Probably, yes, yeah.
Would work.
I'd agree with that.
I don't think it's necessarily better, which is the problem, right? I can think of a lot of things that would work as TV shows. Would they be better? I don't know. And the other way around is even harder for me to say, this TV show would have been great as a movie because you have to cut so much, right? Even a lot of limited series will still have, 8+ episodes. And 8 episodes at 45 minutes each, that is depending on how you cut it, around 4 movies, right? I feel like 90 minutes is a very typical movie runtime. 2 hours happens, but even then, that is still, 45 times 8 is 90 times 4 is 3 times 2, it's 6 hours. It still would be at least 3 movies. So, making it as a single movie, only if there was a lot of stuff that could be cut. I'm sure there is shows like that. I can't think of one right offhand.
Me neither.
I think part of it is because a lot of the stuff, especially stuff that, the stuff you remember is oftentimes the stuff you like, in this case. And so, the shows and movies that you'll end up liking are the ones that are very aware of their medium and are using it to its best effect. So, if I like a TV show, it's probably not because it's bloated and has way too much going on. right? And
True.
if I like a movie,
that makes sense.
It's probably not because it left out a bunch of important stuff. And so it's hard to say, because it would probably be approached very differently if it was one or the other. So, Lord of the Rings is hard to do
I don't know.
as a TV show back in the day, by the way, for example. Like, the actual Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies that you mentioned earlier, back in the day, they would have looked like shit as a TV show because they would not have had the budget.
Really?
I mean, they would not have had the budget to make a lot of the, like, really big effects that they had. And, by the way, a lot of the effects hold up very well because a lot of it's practical, but they would not have been given the budget for a TV show back when those movies were released that would have looked good. Now, today, they would probably get that, and it would work. But like back then, I think it would not have worked as a TV show, purely because of budget. It would not have been as epic.
I guess that makes sense, yeah, too.
It's unfortunate, but that's just the way things are, and that's also why a lot of early Doctor Who looks like shit. But it's still fun to watch, but it just doesn't look very good. Especially by today's standard. Like, if you watch some of the episodes from 2005, they look bad by today's standards. Let's not even talk about original Doctor Who. Like, stuff from the 60s.
That's horrible. But that, again, is like a feeling of nostalgia where you've never really were there to begin with.
It's a charming product of its times in a way, but also it still doesn't look good.
My internet is completely cutting out.
Sergej saying we should end the podcast sometime soon. I mean, we've been going for, I want to say, over an hour.
Wait.
So,
I'm not really saying that. I'm just saying that your video is desynced by more than 20 seconds with the audio. And I'm sometimes not even having video. What the heck is going on?
I luckily think that is just because it looks good on my end. So, I guess that's fine.
Okay.
Point being, I guess if you don't have anything to say anymore, because I feel like we have been kind of going in circles a little bit, then we could also just close it out anyways.
Slightly, yes. Yeah, I'm not really. I don't really have anything more to say about that.
Because I feel like I've said most of what I have to say as well, so... Songs of the week, Sergej.
My song of the week is Fall in the Dark by Shibayan Records. Or something like that.
Okay.
Which is basically a cover of a cover of a cover of a remix of a remix or something like that of originally some form of game music. It's pretty good.
Okay. And my song of the week is not quite as complicated historically, I think. I didn't really look into the history of the song all that much, but it's Summer Sun by Texas. Yes, the band is called Texas. Bands named after places, very common thing. It's even more fascinating when they're not actually from that place, but I believe Texas is actually from Texas. Now, Texas Lightning, however, is not. But they are honorary Texans. But that came later. But I'm completely off topic now. My song of the week is Summer Sun by Texas, as I said. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave your thoughts on what we talked about in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of this. I believe YouTubers, as we are, should also tell you that you should hit the little bell icon and set it to always. But honestly, I don't usually say that. Discord, link in the description. I think that was all the promotion that I have to do. Check out our main channel if you like
Probably
Hearthstone.
yes.
Check out Sergej's channel if you
Also,
like.
videos in sync
Saber.
again. Pog.
And with those good news, Sergej,
That's it.
that's it.